25 years ago this week, a game hit stands over in Japan that would change video games forever. Pokemon made its debut on February 27, 1996, and since then it's been a juggernaut in the gaming industry. Heck, just speaking from personal experience, when I picked this game up as a kid, my mind was blown and it became an addiction of mine for years. Heck, it was one of the first things that my wife and I bonded over when we met, and on the game's 20th anniversary, we even got matching red and blue engagement tattoos to mark the occasion. That is a true story, and yes, I can't believe I found someone who was willing to get on board with that idea either. So in honor of the 25th anniversary, today we're going to do something special to celebrate this beloved franchise. That's why we're going to sing the entire Poke Rap from start to finish. Are you ready, everybody? Here goes. Electro, Diglett, Nidoran. Oh, right. I forgot. Nintendo doesn't like anyone celebrating their franchises without their written permission. Okay, so that idea is scrapped. What else can we do to celebrate the anniversary? Maybe we could go to McDonald's and pick up one of those limited edition Pokemon Happy Meals, and oh, right, scalpers are currently buying them all up because they are literally the worst. Right. I forgot that scalpers are literally the worst. Well, I guess we could always just go outside and play some Pokemon Go, and oh, right, the pandemic. Nobody can go outside right now. Okay, there's gotta be some corner of this franchise that is safe, right? Let's see, people are still mad about the graphics in Sword and Shield. People are arguing over the new MOBA game. YouTubers are currently buying up all of the card packs for clickbait videos. Oh, what about that fighting game from a couple years ago? Has anyone ruined that yet? No? Cool, then leave it to me. Wait, that makes it sound like I'm going to ruin it. Welcome to another episode of Build the Roster, the show where we take a hypothetical fighting game and build our dream roster around it. And what could be more hypothetical than a Pokemon fighting game made by the people behind Tekken? Oh wait, that actually happened. Yes, for anyone who has forgotten, 5 years ago on the Wii U, Nintendo released Pokken Tournament, a Pokemon fighting game that was shockingly good. It had a rich variety of Pokemon, gorgeous stages loaded with Easter eggs, and a very unique combat system where it was one half 2D Classic Fighter and one half Arena Fighter, where the battleground would constantly shift between Field Phase and Duel Phase throughout the match. And surprise, surprise, I was actually really excited for this game when it came out. I even hunted down one of the import arcade machines back in 2015 at Dave & Buster's. However, at this point, the game is, well, it's not exactly got the most active community. The last update for the game came out 3 years ago, and aside from King of the Iron Fist tournament himself, Katsuhiro Harada, randomly mentioning the game on Twitter a few months ago, yeah, the franchise has been rather silent. And considering that it took the Pokemon Company 22 years to make a sequel to one of the most popular Pokemon spin-off games of all time, I don't think we're going to see Pokken Tournament 2 anytime soon. Well, if Nintendo isn't going to revive it for the 25th anniversary, then I guess it falls to us. So today, on Build the Roster, we're going to pretend like the impossible is happening. A sequel to Pokken Tournament is on the way, and Bandai Namco and Nintendo need someone to put together the best roster possible for this game, so they turn to us and they say, I choose you. Yes, that was a really long way to go just to shove that catchphrase in here. Thank you for asking. Now to start things off, we have to determine how many slots this roster will have. So to figure that out, let's take a look at the original game. When Pokken Tournament was released on the Wii U, the game had a starting roster of 16 characters, a fairly standard number for the first installment of a modern new fighting game franchise. But when it got ported to the Switch, that number got bumped up to 21, a pretty sizable increase. That is a solid season pass of characters right there. And then they add 2 DLC characters, getting the final number up to 23. Now, if you know me, then you know that I try to build upon the previous rosters to go larger, but let's be honest, if we got a new Pokken, the roster size probably won't increase that much. These days, most fighting games tend to stick with rosters in the high teens or low 20s. But the Pokemon Company does have a lot of cash behind them that they could throw around to get this roster into the upper end of that spectrum, so let's take the final roster and simply bump it up to a nice even 24. But now that we have our roster size, the more important question is, how do we choose our Pokemon? We have 24 slots available and we have almost 900 Pokemon to choose from. Oh boy, you better believe that some tough cuts had to be made here. And you might think, well, yes, there are almost 900 Pokemon, but surely not all of them are up for consideration. Yes, all of them are up for consideration. Okay, fine, not all of them. Metapod and the other Cocoon Pokemon wouldn't really have worked, and there are a couple Pokemon like Magikarp that aren't really designed for fighting, but aside from them, yes, everyone was up for consideration because one of the things that made the last Pokken roster so great is they picked a huge variety of Pokemon. Well, this is a fighting game, so you need to focus on the fighting type Pokemon, right? Nope, the last Pokken only had 4 fighting types. That's the same as the number of fire and ghost type Pokemon. And considering that dual typing is a thing, some of them barely count as fighting types, so no type gets special treatment. Well, clearly you're going to pick the most popular Pokemon. Nope, I will consider popularity up to a point, but after that, everyone is on the table. I say this almost every episode, but when building a roster, you can't just pick the faces, you need the freaks. You need a few weird picks thrown in there just to make people perk up and ask questions. And the last Pokken had a great combination of big obvious picks and weird out of left field choices. Well, you'll of course go with Pokemon in their final evolution, so that way they're at their strongest, right? Nope, the last Pokken include multiple unevolved Pokemon, and some of them were the most popular characters in the entire game. Well, you'll at least go for Pokemon with similar enough body types that they could work in a conventional fighting game, right? Not even close. The last Pokken had big Pokemon, small Pokemon, Pokemon on 2 legs, Pokemon on 4 legs. Hell, this one is just a floating chandelier. Body types and sizes are no restrictions for this roster. Listen, I could keep going on, but point is, the roster for the first Pokken was wild. So you better believe the roster for the sequel will be even crazier. So how did I put this roster together? I took the roster from the last game and broke it down into every single grouping I could think of. I broke down how many types were featured, being 16 out of the 18 total types, with normal and rock being the only 2 types not represented. I broke down how many legendaries or mythical Pokemon were featured, with the total being 4 if you include the 2 different forms of Mewtwo as separate characters. And I even broke down how many starter type Pokemons were among the roster, with the total coming out to 7. Then I took these breakdowns and applied them to the 24 Pokemon that we were going to put together today to try and create a similar collection. Was this a lot of data to put together? Yes, it was. Did I end up putting together a massive chart figuring out who I could and could not include until I looked like a Charlie Day meme? Yes, I did. Did I ever expect this is what I would need to know Microsoft Excel for? No, it wasn't. But here we are, and that is how I got our roster today. I hope that answers any and all questions, because now it is time to finally get into what we all came here for, the roster. And like with any sequel, we will begin with the returning characters. Now, if you're looking down at the old time code below, you might have noticed, hey, why does the returning character segment seem so short? Well, normally on this show, I like to have the returning characters make up about half the cast. That way you get a good dose of the old favorites while leaving plenty of room for the new faces. But, yeah, did you hear what I just said? There's almost 900 Pokemon out there, so if you're making a sequel to Pokken, it should be overflowing with new fighters. That is why, from the previous 23 characters, I am limiting the returning faces to 5. That is it. Just 5. First up, Pikachu. Super obvious. This little yellow mouse is the face of the franchise. Its rosy electric cheeks have been slapped on every piece of Pokemon merch you can think of. If you have something Pokemon related, then you have to include Pikachu. In fact, Pikachu was so important to the franchise that in the first Pokken, they didn't just include one Pikachu, they include 2. basic regular Pikachu, who oddly enough fought like Heihachi from Tekken, Electric Wind Godfist and all, and Pikachu Libre, a grappling Pikachu wearing a luchador outfit that first appeared in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which the fanbase has come to call R Pika as a reference to mass Street Fighter wrestler R Mika. However, for this game, in the interest of including more characters, we're going to stick to just one Pikachu. So, which of these two am I going with? Well, neither. And both. Yeah, I say we take certain aspects from both of these Pikachus, merge them together to make it sort of an all-around fighter with a bit of Shoto here, a dash of Rush down there, a touch of Grappler thrown in on top, essentially making the face of the franchise the most evenly balanced fighter in the entire game. Then you could still give it those Heihachi punches, but also give it some wrestler moves and make the Pikachu Libre costume an alternate skin for it. Next up, speaking of classic characters who have been the face of Pokemon since the start, Charizard. Yes, the big flying fire lizard literally kicked the whole franchise off. When you went to buy that first Pokemon game, his was the face you saw on the box, and to this day, he remains one of the biggest Pokemon on the popularity polls. He's such a big deal, he's one of the only Pokemon to get 2 Mega Evolutions. Does that seem unfair? Yes, it does, but it doesn't change the fact that this guy has been ruling the Pokemon scene since the start, so he comes back. Next up, Lucario, another incredibly popular character in the series history, having received their own movies, served as the introduction to Mega Evolution in X and Y, and one of the first Pokemon without any connection to the original generation to be included in Smash Bros. And he was even one of the big two faces of the last Pokken game. When they premiered the trailer for the first game, they knew they had to get people excited, so they made sure to slap him front and center. Plus, it's a fighting game, and Lucario literally has a Hadouken. I think that means we're required by law to put him in here. Our fourth return character is Garchomp. This guy was the big boss of Gen 4. I remember everyone going nuts for the Land Shark Dragon thing thanks to its awesome design and because it was the #1 Pokemon for the coolest Elite Four champion Cynthia. No, that is not up for debate. Plus, as I said earlier, one of the things that made Pokken so unique was how it switched back and forth between an arena fighter and a 2D fighter, so we need some Pokemon who could take advantage of that system, and Garchomp's dig move would allow it to tunnel around the stage when it goes into arena mode to really show off how this system can be special. And as for our final returning fighter, I know there's a ton of huge names left from the last installment who you might be expecting, but I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb for this one, no pun intended, and I am choosing Machamp. As I said, I'm not giving fighting types any special treatment in this roster, but I do feel like we need to include at least a few Pokemon who you would expect to find in a tournament, and this guy was the OG fighting Pokemon. And yet, he never ever got a moment in the spotlight. That is until Pokken came out. In 20 years of this series, this was the first time I remember people genuinely being excited for Machamp and talking about him like he belonged. So if Lucario is the Ryu of this franchise, I guess that means Machamp is sort of our Ken. Alright, this was made by the Tekken guys. He's the Paul of the game. But also, there's another reason I want to include Machamp, and that brings me to the big crazy idea behind the episode. Yeah, if you've watched Build the Roster long enough, you know I can't just leave it at the roster. I have to throw in at least one crazy idea for the sequels in order to make them different from the original games. And for Pokken 2, I'm going to propose that we don't just include the Pokemon themselves in the game, I am proposing we also include trainers. You see, Pokken is set in the Fam region, where rather than trainers throwing out Pokemon and giving them commands, instead they use special technology to merge their minds with the Pokemon so that way they fight as one. This is a great opportunity to include tons of popular characters from the Pokemon series in here as trainers beside these Pokemon, which the first Pokken tournament did not do. No, the original Pokken did create some original trainers for the story mode, and they were fine. I mean, they got the job done. But the characters that you played as were always the same blank-faced Build-A-Character. And I understand why they would do that. I mean, it's Pokemon. You always create a brand new character to start your journey with. But to me, this feels like a missed opportunity because I always loved the characters in Pokemon just as much as their little pocket monsters. I always thought the characters in this franchise had really memorable designs and were low with personality. But for Pokken 2, I say we now have specific trainers included as the partners for each Pokemon. It wouldn't have to be mandatory in every mode, for example in Versus mode or in the online matches. If you still want to play as your basic Build-A-Character, then you could. But in the story mode and the arcade ladders, many of these Pokemon would have a famous trainer from the series in their corner, just for some fan service, just so people could pop up and say, ooh, it's that character that I like so much. And not every character would be a classic trainer, some would be brand new characters made just for this game. For example, since Pikachu and Lucario would continue to be the two big faces of this game, they'd get their own brand new trainers in the story mode. But for Charizard, we could have his trainer be Leon from Sword and Shield, since he's one of the only trainers who uses a Charizard as his big gun, and in his home he was something of a professional athlete, so signing up for a fighting tournament isn't too much of a stretch. Garchomp's trainer is going to be Cynthia, which I don't even think I have to explain that one, it's just way too obvious. And for Machamp? Yes, as I said, I know Machamp might be a weird pick since he's not the biggest star out of the returning cast, but you know who was a big star? Bay, the fighting-type gym leader from Sword and Shield. Yeah, she was a big breakout star from that game, and her number one Pokemon was Machamp. So not only would she be the trainer linked to him in the game, but we could even use her special Gigantamax form as his new special move, where upon activating it, Machamp would swing a fist out, and if it made contact with the opponent, it would enter a cinematic where Machamp would grow to kaiju size and bring a stage-destroying punch smashing down. So there you go, there are your 5 returning Pokemon as well as my required weird idea for the episode. So now it's time to get to the real meat of the show. Here are your 19 new Pokemon. Our first contender is Greninja, and there's a lot of reasons to include them. First up, they're already a rather big face in fighting games, as they're one of the few Pokemon to be included as an official fighter in Smash Bros. Secondly, because their design is based around a ninja, there are a ton of unique abilities that we could give them, such as a counter where they dodge an attack leaving a substitute doll in their place, only to appear behind the opponent and kick them across the screen. Or they could use quick hops and jumps to bounce around the stage when it goes into its field phase. And with their long, stretchy tongue, we could give them a Scorpion-style get-over-here move to help close large distances, meaning he would have some of the best maneuverability of any fighter when the stage goes into its field phase. But the most important reason why we have to include Greninja is because Greninja is the most popular Pokemon in the world. Now, I know you might hear that and say, Aaron, that's a bold claim. Why are you shoving your own personal opinion in here like that? Oh, but I'm not. When I say Greninja is the most popular Pokemon in the world, that's actually a fact. And speaking personally, man, I don't get it. I mean, nothing against the Frog Ninja, but this blows my mind. Back in 2016, Greninja was voted as the most popular Pokemon in a Japanese Pokemon election. And you might think, okay, yeah, but that was 5 years ago and it was only in Japan. That doesn't really mean anything today. You're right. You know what does mean something today? Just last year, in February of 2020 for Pokemon Day, the Pokemon Company teamed up with Google to host a worldwide contest to find the most popular Pokemon, and Greninja won with over 140,000 votes, beating out Lucario in second place with 102,000 votes. Yeah, this wasn't even close. Greninja didn't squeak by. Greninja was voted the most popular Pokemon by almost 40,000 extra votes. Again, I don't get it. I don't quite understand why the entire world has fallen in love with this guy, but they have. And if you win a landslide like that, then yeah, you better believe you're going to make it into this game. In fact, considering that he's that popular, I don't think any established character could do them justice as their trainer. So this would be one of the fighters in this game to be paired with a brand new trainer created just for Pokken 2.
Who's that Pokemon?
Incineroar. Let's keep the list of big beefy stars going with Incineroar. I know it might be easy to say I'm picking him just because, again, he's already in Smash Bros, so it would just make sense, but no, actually. I'd pick Incineroar even if he hadn't given Kin Masters the old Alolan hello. And that's because Incineroar is built to be in a fighting game. His design is based around professional wrestlers, so if you tell him a bunch of Pokemon are jumping into the ring to duke it out, you know he's going to come strolling in there holding a chair to smash Garchomp over the head. But it's not just his personality that fits. He's also a grappler, a very important fighting style that needs to be represented in any decent fighting game, and as a grappler, he would specialize in fighting on the 2D field because he would have a straight shot at the opponent, but once you move into the arena-style field phase, he could imitate a wrestling ring with a move where he acts like he's bouncing off the ring's ropes to propel himself towards the opponent to help close the gap. And this move could then combo into a lariat swing or a flying leg drop. And as for his trainer, I would have to go with Professor Kukui, or more accurately, the Masked Royale. If you know the games, then you know that Kukui's alter ego, the Masked Royale, already enters his Incineroar into Battle Royale wrestling tournaments, so of course he would bring him to the Farum region to duke it out. Now, as I said in the last game, there were only 2 types of Pokemon not represented, Normal and Rock. So for this game, I wanted to make sure I include every type, so let's go ahead and knock these 2 off the list.
Who's that Pokemon?
Kangaskhan. Yes, this big punching machine has been a fairly popular pick for players ever since the first game, however, they've never really had any chance to shine the spotlight. There have been a few gym leaders who have used them on their teams, but never as their big signature fighter. Well, I say it's time that finally changed. Let's put Kangaskhan in here, and as I said, they haven't really had any trainers I closely associate them with, so once again, we will create a brand new character for them in this game. Maybe a mother-daughter team to match the fact that all Kangaskhan's are female and they're known as the parent Pokemon. Which brings me to what would be the most unique thing about how Kangaskhan would fight. You know how in Pokken you would have a synergy gauge that you could raise up, and when it's full, you could go into synergy burst mode, where for a brief moment of time you would be powered up and you could do your super in this mode. Well, in the last game, any Pokemon that could Mega Evolve would do just that when you activate Synergy Burst. But what happens to Kangaskhan when they Mega Evolve? Their little baby Kangaskhan leaves the pouch and fights beside their mother. So in this game, when Kangaskhan Synergy Burst, their kid would jump out of the pouch and start hopping around and punching and kicking anything around you. Almost making this sort of like Strider's Ouroboros in Marvel, where the baby Kangaskhan would sort of be like a satellite for the adult, just hopping around it, deflecting attacks, or doing additional damage in order to make some of your moves safe.
Who's that Pokemon?
Lycanroc. Now that we've got the normal type out of the way, let's tackle the game's big rock type with Lycanroc. Probably the most popular rock type from either of the last 2 generations, and there's a good reason for that. How can you not love the good Boulder Doggo? He's got 3 different forms, so there's a new favorite pet for everyone out there. But for this game, we're going to go with the Midnight variation. I'm choosing this form for a few reasons, the first of which being that if we go with the Midnight variation, then that means that their trainer could be Olivia, one of the biggest characters from Sun and Moon. But the other reason why I'm picking Midnight form is because, yes, as I said, you don't need to choose Pokemon with humanoid figures. They can be built in any sort of stance and we can make that work. But if they are standing upright and they do have giant fists that you can use for punching, it does make it easier to map their moves out. In fact, in the Pokemon games, because the Midnight form has these big furry mitts that it uses to attack, you can actually teach it moves like Mega Punch or any of the elemental punches, which its other forms can't learn and would be good to use in this game. In fact, while we're talking about its moveset, as I said, there were no rock types in the last game, which is a shame because rock types have a perfect move to just wreak havoc when the stage switches to field phase. Stealth Rock. Give Lycanroc the Stealth Rock move that can only be activated in a stage's field form, where they would throw out 3 clumps of tiny rocks all over the stage that attack any opponent that gets near them. You can only have 1 instance of this move active at any given time. You couldn't keep stacking it over and over again until the entire screen was covered in rocks, and the rocks would eventually fade over time or disappear when the stage switches forms, but would still be a great way to take control of the match and play into the unique arena layout.
Who's that Pokemon?
Mimikyu. We had to include Mimikyu. They've only been around for 2 games now, and they're already one of the most beloved Pokemon ever created. Remember that popularity poll that I brought with Greninja? I mentioned Lucario was number 2. Guess what? Mimikyu was number 3. And I repeat, he has been in far fewer games than either the number 1 or number 2 Pokemon. And considering that the whole story behind Mimikyu is that they're a Pokemon that wants to be popular but is afraid people will hate it, so they hide themselves inside of a trashy cosplay of a Pikachu, I kinda love that in reality, they're actually more popular than the Pokemon they're trying to replicate. Mimikyu would slide and slither across the stage with its big ghostly hands swinging out from under its trash bag body, And they could also have a long command grab where if they get their hands on you, then they could pull you under their disguise and pummel you inside of itself before spitting you out. And as for its big super move, they would darken the entire screen as they lift up their costume to reveal only a big terrifying pair of red eyes in the middle of a shadow that's engulfing the entire stage before everything goes black and the enemy suffers a series of blows. Sort of this game's version of the Raging Demon. Now as for who their trainer would be, I know that in Sword and Shield Alistair had one and Sun Moon Acerola tasked you with confronting one for her challenge, so both of them would work, but honestly, I would love it if their trainer was just a mysterious figure in a trench coat with a wide brim hat whose face you never saw and they never said anything, and the implied joke would be that Mimikyu's trainer is just another Mimikyu wearing a disguise, so that way they could enter the tournament. I know it's silly, but Pokemon, you need some silliness in here.
Who's that Pokemon?
Sylveon. Eevee is another hugely popular Pokemon. In fact, over the past few years, they've really started to ascend to the point where they're almost on equal ground with Pikachu. However, Eevee doesn't really have that wide of a moveset because the thing that really makes them special is that they can evolve down multiple different paths depending on how you raise them. So while I didn't feel right including Eevee in the roster, I could still put one of their evolutions in here. And the two biggest evolutions, according to that popularity poll that I can't stop bringing up, is the Dark-type Umbreon and the Fairy-type Sylveon. Now, not to spoil too much of the rest of this list, but we've already got a good number of Dark types in here, so that's why I'm picking Sylveon. Now, this is our first quadrupedal Pokemon, but Sylveon would still be pretty easy to program because they've got those giant ribbons that act as arms that could give them a decent range for their punches. And since Sylveon is often associated with the Pokemon performances in contests, maybe their big super could be a big flashy sparkly show that ends with them blasting the opponent with a barrage of heart-shaped energy blasts. Yes, I know that sounds way too cute, but Sylveon, that's kind of their whole thing. Also, I would create a brand new character to be their trainer since the only canonical Sylveon trainer from the games was Valerie, and as I said, Sylveon is all about being sweet and loving and cute, and when I think of those qualities, you know what doesn't come to mind? Human beings with big freaky bug eyes! So, yeah, we're making a new trainer on this one.
Who's that Pokemon?
Urshifu. Alright, so far we've been covering basic Pokemon, but the last Pokken tournament didn't shy away from including legendaries and mythicals, so I made sure to throw a handful of those in here as well. And first up is Urshifu, because out of all the legendary and mythical Pokemon ever created, this one screams, I want to enter a fighting tournament. They literally have a headband as part of their fur. However, this raises an interesting question. Which version of Urshifu do we include? In the game, you evolve Kubfu into Urshifu by showing them a scroll in one of the Towers of Two Fists. This will evolve Kubfu into either the Single Strike form or the Rapid Strike form of Urshifu. So which of these two forms will we include in the game? Both. Yeah, it was really hard to pick between these two forms, so at first I thought, oh, let's make Urshifu a stance fighter, and they can switch between these two forms like a martial artist practicing different styles. But then I remembered, oh right, Pokemon don't really work that way. Once they evolve, they can't exactly side-evolve into their other form whenever they want. So, what I'm suggesting is that we make the Rapid Strike form the version that we include in the game. However, if you beat Arcade Mode, mean a bunch of crazy criteria like gain a certain number of perfects and first attacks and finishing enough matches with super moves, then after you complete the Arcade Ladder, you would unlock a bonus fight against his Single Strike form. If you beat that, then you would unlock him as the secret 25th character in the game. Now why would I have you unlock his Single Strike form like this? Because his Rapid Strike form is part fighting, part water, which is meant to represent the fluid nature of martial arts, specifically referencing the classic Bruce Lee quote.
I said empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water.
That's a pretty good concept to put behind a playable character. However, his Single Strike form is part fighting, part dark, meant to represent a more harsh and aggressive form of fighting. In other words, the Single Strike form would be this game's Dark Ryu, their violent Ken, their Devil Jin, the dark version of one of the playable characters that you have to unlock, an age-old tradition for any fighting game. We would also see this dark divide in their trainers, as the Rapid Strike form's master would be Mustard, the dojo master who gives you Kubfu in the game, and his Single Strike form, wouldn't even have a trainer. They would act as a lone wanderer who isn't even officially part of the tournament. They just go wherever they can find strong opponents. I feel like I'm getting way too serious for her description of what is essentially a kung fu bear.
Who's that Pokemon?
Zeraora. Our next mythical Pokemon is another fairly recent addition with Zeraora, who was one of the later additions to Sun and Moon. I'm choosing them because A, I want to get an electric type in here that isn't just another Pikachu, and B, well, just look at him. Between the big gauntlet, shoulder pads, and a mane that's shaped like a scarf, this guy is basically a Super Sentai hero in Pokemon form. He's essentially the Shonen Jump protagonist Pokemon. But also, if you look up their Pokédex entry, they sound like the ultimate rushdown character. In Ultra Sun, they mention that they can electrify their claws to hit an opponent even if they dodge it. So, when they go into Synergy Burst mode in this game, we could give them big electric claws that extend their reach. And both Ultra Moon and Sword mention that it can move as fast as lightning, so this guy is built for getting into your opponent's face and applying pressure. Also, Zeraora has the signature move Plasma Fist, which to me sounds like it would just translate perfectly into this game as a super move.
Who's that Pokemon?
Rillaboom. So far, we've added a new Fire starter with Incineroar and a new Water starter with Greninja, so it's time for the Grass starter to get their turn, and I'm going with Rillaboom, the final evolution of the Grookey line. I'm choosing him because in the Pokemon Kingdom, not a lot of fighters carry around weapons, but Rillaboom carries a whole drum set on its back, which could make for some really interesting mechanics. You could use the drumsticks to not only give him some extra range on his attacks, but it could also make him a Rekka fighter, where if you input continuous commands in the exact right order, then his special moves could all turn to drum solos that he applies on the opponent's face. And when the screen switches to field phase, you could give him a move where he pulls out his drum and plants it into the ground. While the drum is out, he couldn't move until he put it back away again. However, now each of his moves would turn into hits on the drum that would send roots flying across the screen at your opponent, making it harder for them to close in on you. Also, I wanted to go with Rillaboom because I feel like out of the three Galarian starters, he got the least attention. And again, one of the things that I enjoy the most about the last Pokken game is that it gave some Pokemon who never got a chance in the spotlight a time to shine. So this could be the opportunity that the Rockstar Monkey has always been waiting for. But he wouldn't be the only star to join from the Galar region.
Who's that Pokemon?
Scorbunny. Yes, when creating a new fighting game spin-off for a popular franchise, you need to include whatever's the new hotness. And for Pokemon Sword and Shield, that would be Scorbunny. And no, I did not intend new hotness to be a pun. When the new 3 stars were revealed, everyone had their favorites, and while I might have repped the grass monkey, that funky monkey, and the sad lizard boy had a lot of fans, it was Scorbunny that most people flocked to. And if we're going to include some unevolved Pokemon, Scorbunny is a great grab. Not only can he sprint across the arena when it's in field phase to quickly close the distance on opponents, but his big rabbit feet would allow him to have high maneuverability and sprinting jumping kicks. And for his projectile, since he's supposed to be based on a soccer player, he could kick a ball of fire at the opponent, but the type of kick that he delivered would change depending on which kick button you hit as you enter the command, but also depending on what phase the stage was in at the time. So if you're in the duel phase, then you could kick it straight forward or upwards for an anti-air. And if you're in the field phase, then you could kick it straight or in a curving motion if you think the opponent is going to try and dodge. And as for his trainer, I'm going to choose Hop, your friend and rival from Sword and Shield. He did pick one of the starter Pokemon, so it would fit for him to use Scorbunny. Plus, well, his name is Hop, and this is a rabbit. It feels destined to happen. Plus, remember that Hop's entire storyline in the last game was about him trying to become a great trainer so that way he could challenge his brother, but he never got that opportunity because he kept getting beaten down over and over again? Well, in this game, I already said that Leon would be the one controlling Charizard, so if you played as Scorbunny in the arcade mode, Hop would finally get that opportunity that he's been waiting for to challenge his brother.
Who's that Pokemon?
Metagross. Time to go from one of the smallest Pokemon in the roster to one of the biggest. Metagross was the big beast of Gen 3 as he served as the ultimate Pokemon of the Elite Four champion Steven Stone, who would act as his trainer in the game. Metagross would have fairly average speed and very high defense, taking little stun damage and having a few special physical attacks with armor on them, but he'd really only be able to do big damage at close range, making him a fairly large target for zoners. However, he would be able to use some of his psychic powers, such as confusion to stun the opponent to help get in close on them, or even some telekinetic grabs to pull the opponent in so that way they could be within attack range. It would also become much easier for Metagross to get in close on the opponent when he activates his Synergy boost, as he would then transform into his floating Mega Form, which would allow him to glide much quicker over the stage when it's in the field phase. Alright, Metagross, Scorbunny, these are some fairly obvious picks. There's some big faces in the Pokemon universe, so for these next few contenders, we're going back to the oddballs.
Who's that Pokémon?
Vespiquen. As I said, I want to make sure that every Pokemon type gets represented, so that means that we need a bug type. But out of all the bug types, why did I choose Vespiquen? Because she fits a very specific fighter type that right now is not being represented too much in this game. Zoners. When I look at Vespiquen, I see that character who essentially just sends big sharp spikes at you from every single angle when you're all the way across the screen, as she just sits there and does nothing. Heck, she even kind of looks like the Pokemon equivalent of Hilda from Under Night in Birth. This is totally what her fighting style would be. When the stage is in duel phase, she would sit back and launch Fury Cutters and Pin Missiles at the opponent. But then when you switch to field phase, she would send armies of Combees to fly across the screen and attack the opponent to keep them away. And for anyone who's wondering how we would balance all this out, Vespiquen is a pretty big bug with itty bitty wings, so even though she would attack all over the stage, she wouldn't be able to move that fast. So if you were able to get in close on her, then it would be very difficult for her to escape. As for her trainer, well, there have actually been 3 different big name characters from the games to use Vespiquen, but none of them really scream aggressive zoner to me. I mean, we have a little kid, an artsy beatnik, and this guy who I didn't even bother committing to memory. No, seriously, who the heck was this character? His name was Aaron? Aaron. And I didn't remember him? Oh yeah, we're creating a brand new character on this one.
Who's that Pokémon?
For our big poison type representative, we're going with Nidoking. I've always felt like Nidoking was that Pokemon from Gen 1 that was right at the edge of blowing up. Most people agree they're cool, but they've never broken into that A-class level of popularity. They've never been that Pokemon that you would see on box art or merch. So I say we give them a chance to shine in this game. Plus, just speaking in terms of character types, Nidoking would be a great tank. He is a big lumbering wall of scales that might move slow, but he would take reduced hit stun and have an armored charge attack where he rams his horn at the opponent to help him close in. He'd sort of be like this game's version of Abigail from Street Fighter V, except, you know, not stupid. And as for some additional moves to help him get in close on the opponent, he could also swing his giant Godzilla tail around, or he could stomp on the ground to use Earthquake, which would temporarily stun any opponent not jumping or blocking low. So even though he would be one of the slower fighters in the game, he'd still have a variety of ways to compensate for that. And once he gets in close, he would show off how crazy high his attack stat was. And as for his trainer, we have to go with the original big baddie of the Pokemon series, Giovanni. Nidoking has been one of his recurring Pokemon in multiple different appearances, and as I said, Nidoking would fight using overwhelming strength, ruthless stun mechanics, and aggressive pressure. All of which are words I would use to describe the mob boss of the Pokemon universe.
Who's that Pokémon?
Obstagoon. I will admit I am giving some extra love to Sword and Shield Pokemon. I mean, it is the most recent installment, so you do want to use its current popularity to help bring people into this new game. That's just good synergy. But so far, all the choices I've gone with have been pretty obvious picks. 2 starters and a mythical. We need 1 surprise, so I'm going with Obstagoon. I remember how shocked people were when they saw that the cute and cuddly Zigzagoon was going to transform into a member of the Kiss Army in the Galar region, and it's because of that new rocker attitude that I'm picking him for this roster. We need that 1 super aggressive brawler. The character that doesn't fight with big crazy specials or precise combos, they just go in and smash their way to victory. When I look at this guy, I see him doing headbutts, shoulder charges. They could even use double edge to do major damage to the enemy while suffering some recoil themselves, because when I look at him, I see a guy who doesn't care if they get bruised up so long as they can dish out the damage. And as for his trainer, I would go with Pierce. I've seen a decent-sized fanbase pop up for this character, and as I said, part of the beauty of including notable trainers from the games is that even if there's a Pokemon in the game someone isn't looking forward to, they could still end up getting excited for the trainer, and that would make them want to play the character.
Who's that Pokemon?
Frostlass! We need an Ice type to help fill in this roster, and wow, was this a hard one to choose. There are so many good Ice types that would be great to include, but I'm picking Frostlass for two reasons. One is because this Pokemon was actually based on the legendary Yuki Onna, an ice spirit in Japanese lore, so if I'm looking for a Pokemon to serve as the face of Ice types, Frostlass is all about that. And secondly, because Frostlass is half Ice type and half Ghost type, which would make for really unique combinations of moves. When the stage is in field phase, they could use moves like Ominous Wind or Icy Wind to place patches of white fog in spots on the field that would freeze any opponent that ran through it. And when the field is in its 2D phase, we could give them a counter, where if the opponent hits Frostlass, then she would just drift through them like the ghost that she is, freezing them in the process. You could also give her some curse moves on top of these freezing abilities to make her a very status effect heavy fighter. As for their trainer, there have been two key figures in the games to use Frostlass, and between the two of them, I'm going to pick Glacia, because she just has more of that air of dignity and mystery to her that befits this spirit.
Who's that Pokemon?
Ivysaur. I want to make sure to include one middle evolution from one of the starters because I always feel like people overlook these forms. I mean, the first form is the cute cuddly baby form, the final form is the big powerhouse monster form, but the middle form is always forgotten about. People treat them like they're the awkward teenage years. But honestly, I love the middle stages for the starters. They hold on to a lot of the stuff that you liked about their starter forms, but give them a dash of flair and personality on top of it all. And the last Pokken, they made sure to include Braixen, so clearly somebody who was working on this game understood what made these middle forms so fun. So we're going to keep that tradition going with this game. And I'm going to pick Ivysaur because in the first Pokken, we got Charizard, the final form of Charmander, and we got Blastoise, the final form of Squirtle. But we didn't get anything for the Bulbasaur line. Everyone's favorite little dinosaur dog didn't get squat. But I can understand why, because if you look at his final form Venusaur, it's not exactly designed for combat. He looks like he would be too slow to move around the stage, and he would be a massive target. However, his middle form Ivysaur, he's got more moves and power than Bulbasaur. It would stand to reason that the Vine Whips that he would attack with would probably be longer than Bulbasaur's, but he's still small enough that he could hop and gallop around the stage much quicker than Venusaur. So, in the interest of finally rounding out the original three starters, Ivysaur will serve as the face of middle evolutions in this game. As for his trainer, well, when it comes to the original game, Charizard and Blastoise aren't the only two faces that get more attention than their third counterpart. Everyone remembers Red and Blue, the legendary rivals who started this series off. Not a lot of people talk about Green. Or, well, okay, quick history lesson, but because originally in Japan they released Pokemon Red and Pokemon Green, your original rival's name was Green, not Blue. But then in America, they released Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue, so they changed his name over here to be Blue, while at the same time in the manga over in Japan, they introduced the character that was supposed to be your second rival, and they called her Blue in Japan, but then when that got translated to America, they changed her name to be Green, and yeah, it's just as confusing as it sounds. So, when she made her official debut in the games in the re-release of Fire Red and Leaf Green, they decided to simplify it by calling her Leaf. So while Red and Blue will not be appearing in this game, as I feel they have already been in plenty of other games so far, Leaf will finally get a chance to step out of their shadow as she will go into battle with her Ivysaur.
Who's that Pokemon?
Noivern. Now we need to include a new Dragon-type Pokemon. We can't just let Charizard and Garchomp continue to be the two faces of that type in this game. I mean, heck, Charizard isn't even technically a Dragon-type unless he Mega Evolves. However, I didn't want to just include another classically designed dragon. I wanted something with a bit more uniqueness, which brought me to Noivern. Also, Noivern would be our only Pokemon that has flying as its primary type on the roster. So again, I feel it adds a bit more uniqueness to its inclusion. And since it's primarily a flying type, that could once again play into the stage shift mechanic. When the stage is in dual phase, it would crawl on its legs and wingtips, But when the stage swaps to the arena-style field phase, it would start flapping its wings around, providing it with some decent maneuverability and speed, but the trade-off would be that now with its wings spread out, it would be a much larger target. As for their trainer, I'm going with Zinnia, who appeared in the bonus Delta episode of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I remember her being a very popular character when she first premiered, and her story did end with her and her dragon Pokemon fulfilling their destiny, so now they were just going to walk off into the sunset to find a new purpose. So, like all wandering nomadic video game characters, it's only a matter of time until they search for answers in the heart of battle and join a fighting tournament. Plus, I'll be real with you, I'm a sucker for characters with big tattered cloaks around their shoulders. I don't know why, I just think they're neat. Alright, we've only got 2 more spots on the list, and as I said, the last game included 4 legendary and mythical Pokemon, at least as long as you count Mewtwo and Dark Mewtwo as 2 separate characters. And so far, not including our secret 25th character, we've only got 2. So these last 2 characters are going to be some more legendaries. One good, one, well, not as good.
Who's that Pokemon?
Zacian. As I said earlier, I will admit I'm giving some extra love to Sword and Shield since they're the new kids on the block, so I decided to grab one of the legendary dogs from those games. I'm picking Zacian because, well, as much as I love the crazy shield main on Zamazenta, this is a fighting game and Zacian uses a sword, which would give him a huge range, so yeah, he wins. Now I know that some people might think that giving a Pokemon a giant weapon to bring into the ring might be a little bit too broken, but there is a way to balance that out. Remember, Zacian has 2 forms, one with the sword and one without. So he would start each match in his regular form, but when he goes into Synergy Boost mode, he would pull out his sword to give him wider, quicker slashes for a limited amount of time. And as for their trainer, let's go with Sonia. She dedicated herself to studying these 2 legendary Pokemon, so we could say that Zacian has sensed that there's going to be some far-off disaster in the land of Farum, and they need to show up to stop it, but in order to enter this tournament, they need a human companion, so it decides to trust Sonia since she has worked so hard to understand them. Now, what could this big disaster be that it has to prevent, you ask?
Who's that Pokemon?
Deoxys. We need someone to act as the big boss of this game. In the last game, we had Mewtwo, so what other fighter could match the original big legendary powerhouse of the Pokemon world? Well, there have certainly been a fair number of menacing monsters to pick from, but I'm going with Deoxys. For starters, he's been one of the few recurring antagonists in both the games, the anime, and the manga, so he certainly has the track record that could support him popping back up again. Plus, the way that he always appears is kinda epic. This thing rides around on a meteor and appears whenever it's about to crash into the planet. So imagine you beat the final challenge to become the champion of the Farum League in the arcade mode, when suddenly a meteor comes crashing down into the Coliseum, destroying everything, and then your hero looks up and sees Deoxys standing there like Omega Rugal at the end of Capcom vs SNK 2. That seems like one heck of a way to introduce the final boss. This would also be our way of getting around them needing a trainer partner. They didn't exactly enter the tournament, they just sort of showed up to wreck shop. But I also wanted to pick Deoxys because remember how I said I was thinking about making Urshifu a Stance Fire where they could switch between their 2 different forms, but I couldn't do that because Pokemon don't work like that? Guess what? Deoxys works like that. Deoxys has 4 forms that can switch between freely: normal, attack, defense, and speed. So let's make Deoxys a Stance Fire and they can swap between these 4 different forms in order to enhance different stats. For example, when it's in defense mode, he would move much slower, but he would have armor on all of his special moves. When it's in attack mode, it would be a glass cannon that would dish out major damage but would take heavy hits. And maybe they could only go into speed mode when the stage is shifted into field phase, but would allow them to fly and zip all over this big arena, making them much harder to hit. And there you have it, everyone, all 24 of the fighters for Pokken Tournament 2, with a couple of trainers thrown in on top and a secret 25th fighter. I feel like with this setup we're hitting many of the same points of variety that the original Pokken did, as we not only have 4 legendary or mythical Pokemon, 6 starter Pokemon, and even a handful of unevolved Pokemon, but we also have every single type being represented, and no type has more than 3 fighters on this starting roster, not including our secret 25th fighter. Point is, I think we created a solid roster with enough faces, enough weird picks, and almost every corner of the Pokemon universe being represented. And with the new system that we've established of trainers coming in here to pair up with these Pokemon, you could see some great interactions between these fighters, such as Hop facing off with his brother Leon, Bay facing off with the legendary Dojo Master Mustard, Zinnia having to confront her destiny and battling Deoxys, Leaf facing off with Giovanni to go through the same trial that the other two Gen 1 stars went through, and Steven and Cynthia facing each other to see who is the true greatest Elite Four champion. The answer is Cynthia. And since we're pairing trainers with Pokemon, that means that when DLC comes along, it would help to sell these new fighters more than ever, because let's say that you aren't the biggest fan of one of the new Pokemon we introduce, but you love the trainer. Yeah, that is going to help move some season passes. I mean, heck, there's literally a Pokemon Gacha mobile game that is just trying to collect all the trainers. That's how much people love these characters. In fact, you know what? It's the 25th anniversary, it's kind of a big deal. Let's close out with a quick bonus round of Build the Roster. Here is your first season of DLC for Pokken 2. For Alligator. The only generation of Pokemon I couldn't fit into this roster was Gen 2, which bummed me out because I love Gen 2. So first order of business for the DLC is to make sure that we get one of the faces of Gold and Silver in here. So I am going with Feraligatr, the evolved form of the game's water starter, and its trainer is going to be your rival from the game, Silver. I feel like out of all the rivals, Silver gets the least love, which the Pokemon Company has basically said is on purpose, since he was the closest to being a straight up villain out of any of the rivals in the games. And the Pokemon Company has said they want to move away from having more sinister rivals. They want your rivals moving forward to mostly just be your friends who you're competing with. But remember, this game is going to be aimed at a different audience, made by a different team, so it's as good a chance as any to finally bring him back. Garbodor. We did include 2 Poison-type Pokemon in this starting roster, but Ivysaur is mostly a plant type, and Nidoking would mainly use his big beefy physical attacks. I want to include a character that really leans into the poison aspect and could have tons of crazy poison traps and status effects, and the walking garbage dump totally speaks to that. Also, their trainer would have to be Oleana from Sword and Shield, because the contrast of this high and mighty elegant woman being paired with a trash pile raises many questions that the original game did not cover. So we need to include her in this game just so that she can have an arcade ending and some character interactions that give her some backstory, darn it. Haxorus. We only include 1 new dragon type in the roster, and even then, dragon was its secondary type, so let's throw in 1 character that is just a straight up no-nonsense dragon type. But there are plenty of dragon Pokemon to choose from, so for this contestant, I didn't look at the Pokemon first, I looked at the trainer to find the most popular option. And considering that Iris has been a gym leader and Elite Four champion and was a sidekick for an entire season in the anime, yeah, she's the obvious answer of who should be our dragon type trainer. So let's include her and her main fighter, Haxorus. Golisopod. This guy almost became our bug representative in our game. It was neck and neck between him and Vespiquen, but in the end, I realized Golisopod would play like another big bruiser, and we kinda already had a fair number of them in our starting roster. However, this is the DLC. We don't have to worry about keeping things balanced anymore. We can just go ham and include whoever we want. Plus, if we put Golisopod in here, then that means our favorite bonehead villain leader Guzma would be his trainer, so yeah, there's no reason not to put the big bug in here. Groudon. We need to include at least 1 legendary in this first season pass, and it was kind of an easy choice because, as I said, I managed to get every one of each type of Pokemon in this starting roster. However, remember that whole thing about dual typing where some Pokemon have a primary type and a secondary type? Yeah, the 2 ground type Pokemon I include both had ground as their secondary type. This was the one and only type that I could not fit a primary type in here. So, to make it up to the ground type fans, the big legendary King of the Earth Groudon is going to be making it into the DLC, and their trainer is going to be Maxie, the leader of Team Magma. And as for our last character in Season 1, Zoroark. For the final character of a Season Pass, you want something that is going to make everyone who hasn't signed up yet say, okay, yeah, you got me, I'll come back to the game. And not only is Zoroark a pretty popular Pokemon, and would have some really crazy moves to take advantage of its illusion powers, but also their trainer would be In from Black and White. one of the bigger and better rivals from the series, a fan favorite, and a guy who could have some really unique interactions with the other characters. This is the trainer and Pokemon combo we would definitely want to save for the end, because it would get even the non-fighting game Pokemon fans to sign up for this game and its DLC. And that's it! There is your complete roster plus Season 1 of DLC for Pokken 2. Nothing else to do here, except for talking about the support Pokemon. I'm just kidding, we're not going to talk about the support Pokemon. That would mean covering like 40 more Pokemon, and nobody has time for that. But I hope you enjoyed our big celebration in honor of the 25th anniversary of this legendary franchise. As I said, this series was important to me when I was a kid, and I still hold some love for it even to this day, so I wanted to make sure that we did something special for it. If you like this episode, then make sure that you subscribe so that way you can see even more hypothetical fighting game rosters. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of this show, and we've got some big stuff planned for the next year, including some games that you guys have been asking me for ever since we started this series, sequels to some legendary franchises, and Pokemon isn't the only RPG series celebrating a 25th anniversary this year that at some point in time also split off into a fighting game. So we've got all that and more coming up later this year. So hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, give us a thumbs up, all that other stuff that you have to do here on YouTube. And you can always suggest future Build the Rosters that you want to see in the comments down below, or on Twitter at Thorgy's Arcade, or you can head over to Twitch at twitch.tv/Professor Thorgy to watch early drafts of this show. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Stay safe out there, and come back next time. Geez, how many times did I actually have to say Pokemon within this episode? And oh my god!